Hello, good evening, everybody.
Just one second, Luke. Here you go. Okay, so Luke, thank you so much for being here. You're good to go.
All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Luke McLean, and I'm a pupil barrister at Garden Court Chambers. It's a pleasure to speak to you all today and share my journey, because it wasn't too long ago when I was in your position and attended similar events like this to gain networking opportunities and learn tips on how to secure pupillage. So I'm really honoured when I get asked to share my journey at events like this. Um, so I'm just going to speak to you about my journey to the bar and sort of my background. I come from a Jamaican household. Both my parents are born and bred in Jamaica. My mother came here to the UK when she was around 11 years old. My father came here when he was in his late 20s. My mum worked as an admin assistant in the NHS, and my father was a carpenter. Growing up, I had literally no intention to become a lawyer. One thing I did know was that I wanted to be something in life. I wanted to be somebody. I grew up with no role models around me in the sense of this is what I want to be when I'm older. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The role models I had around me were quite the opposite of role models. They were, in fact, bad influences. And I'm not going to talk about what those bad influences are, but the point here is that I had very little positive role models around me, apart from, of course, my parents who taught me the value of hard work and patience. From the ages of 9 to 14, I had ambitions of becoming a professional footballer. I grew up in Wembley. I was one of the best footballers in my borough, which is Brent, alongside players like, you must have heard of Raheem Sterling, who is now one of the best players in the world. So I weren't particularly academic and I had no real focus on education. It was only when I got injured in football and I was put in a cast for around two years at the age of 14, I decided to focus on education. And luckily, this was just in time to focus for GCSEs. And I managed to scrape through GCSEs and obtain pretty average grades, nothing outstanding. I probably got 1 or 2 A's in IT and science, and all the others were B's and C's. So I was not an outstanding student. And then came the decision to stay on that sixth form or go to college. Throughout high school, I got excluded a few times, but I was fortunate when the head of sixth form allowed me to stay on, because most of my friends weren't allowed to stay on because of previous bad behavior, and the others went on to college, of course. In sixth form, I studied philosophy, psychology, IT, and sociology, and I got 3 B's. I remember the first day of sixth form, I was introduced to my philosophy teacher, who was a young black man named Mr. Douglas. And this was the first time I ever saw a young black male teacher who represented what I represented. And my eyes were literally like open at this point in terms of believing I can be something in life. I could do anything in life. And so this teacher literally transformed my life completely. And he probably doesn't even know that. Then came the time to pick whether to go to university and what to study. I chose uni, and I didn't choose uni because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer at that point. I chose uni because I had no other options in terms of just progressing in life. And for me, law was just a random pick. I remember it was between studying criminal justice or law. At one point, I played with the idea of doing IT or finance. Literally, I had no clue what I wanted to do. But when I look back at it, I think I was attracted to law and subjects such as criminal justice because of the type of subjects I picked at A levels. But also because of the injustice I witnessed growing up. I was stopped and searched a number of times growing up in my area, and to the point that I can't even count them on my two hands. And also, even to an extent, my parents divorced when I was around 14. And I think this really affected me growing up. So I was always intrigued in topics to do with morality or anything that concerned right and wrong. But I didn't quite understand the subject of law and what law entailed. I remember at the time when I was filling out my UCAS applications, I remember trying to get advice from my teachers as to what I should study. And I remember my sociology teacher telling me that I shouldn't pick law, I should just do sociology. Nevertheless, I picked it anyway. I picked law, and this was the beginning of my journey to becoming a barrister. At this point, I was clueless. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was going to study. I didn't know what law entailed. It was literally a random pick. So I went to study at City University London, now called City University of London. I think they're a part of the University of London group now. And I remember the first day outside the lecture hall, I was having a conversation with other students, and a girl said to me, "Oh, I thought you were going to sound ghetto. I thought you were going to sound ghetto." And I'll never forget that comment because what, she thought I was going to sound ghetto because I was black. Anyway, I didn't challenge her because it was my first day, and I just wanted to get on with things. So that was the beginning of my journey. And I guess the next question is how I decided to become a barrister rather than a solicitor. Throughout uni, we had loads of people come in to talk to us about different career paths. 90% of these people were commercial solicitors. I remember one guy who founded Aspiring Solicitors. I'm sure we've all heard about, I think his name's Chris White from Aspiring Solicitors. He came in, and I remember him saying that trainee solicitors earned, I think it was something ridiculous, like £60,000 per year. And it increases to £70,000 or £80,000 on qualification. And at that point, I was persuaded by the money that I wanted to be a commercial solicitor. But then I undertook several internships and work experience placements in commercial environments. And I knew from then that being a solicitor wasn't for me. I found the office life quite dull and very administrative. And quite frankly, it wasn't what I wanted for my career. In terms of the experiences I had throughout my journey, I worked as a barman for several years. I was a sales associate for Free UK. I remember converting that experience as a sales associate for Free to working in the legal team for Free for 2 weeks, carrying out work experience. And I remember working on a marketing campaign. I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple of years ago, there was an advert of the Cookie Monster for Free UK. And I worked on that campaign, that marketing campaign for Free UK. I worked as a Westlaw trainer on campus. I did several work experience placements in criminal defense firms, and I did loads of mini pupillages. But I think the starting point in deciding to be a barrister rather than solicitor was when a man named Ian Powell from Tucker Solicitors came to my university and asked the whole lecture hall the name of the person who got shot, which sparked the Tottenham riots in 2011. And not one person could answer that question. I remember him going around the lecture hall asking several people, and not one person could answer that question. And I was last, and I answered it, and I said it was Mark Duggan. And then he said, at the end of this discussion, can you come to see me? And so I went to see him at the end, and he offered me work experience at Tucker Solicitors. And I think it was at this firm that I was really, really exposed to going to court, because that firm sent me to shadow various barristers during my experience with them. And I think it was from there I knew if I was going to continue pursuing law, I had to be a barrister. I remember after gaining this experience, because this lasted about 2 to 3 weeks, after gaining this experience at Tucker Solicitors, I remember going to court by myself and just sitting in and watching cases. And I kid you not, I obtained 3 mini pupillages by just going up to barristers in court and introducing myself. And I remember one time in my local court, which is Harrow, I went to watch cases. I sat in the public gallery by myself, and the court usher just asked me who I was, and I told him I'm a student. And he managed to get me to go into the judge's chambers at the back of the courtroom and meet the judge. And this experience was just from me going to court by myself and just sitting in the public gallery. So the point here, I would say, is that you need to use your own initiative, and there are infinite ways how you can obtain legal work experience. But I think the key for me was to network and be creative. By this time, I was in my final year of uni. I was already working with criminal defense solicitors ad hoc, where I'd get paid on a part-time basis for the cases I worked on and taking court notes. Then I graduated with a 2-1 and went straight on to study the BPTC at City University, and I got a 10% discount or 15% discount because I was already a part of City University. And during advocacy training, I remember being so conscious about my background and how I came across to my counterparts who were all educated in Oxford and Cambridge and other red brick universities, and almost always they were always significantly older than me. But anyway, I buckled down. I just ignored all of that noise in the back of my head, because that's all it is. It's just noise and insecurities. I ignored all of that. I buckled down and I passed all my exams on first attempts without having to retake any exam. And then I was called to the bar in 2017. And within 2 weeks of me being called to the bar, I started working in a criminal defense firm for about 6 months, and I was earning 16 grand a year. And I obtained this opportunity by sending an email to the firm with my CV, just asking if they had any opportunities. And the next day, I received a phone call to come in for an interview that same day. I took the train, I went to Kilburn, I did the interview, and within 20 minutes of me leaving the office, I received a phone call telling me that I got the job. So I stayed there for about 6 months. I then moved on to a document review firm working on serious fraud cases for about 2 months. And then I got offered a role on the child sexual abuse inquiry for Lambeth Council. And there I did document review in respect of subject access requests under the old Data Protection Act. And I did this for around 4 to 5 months before I went on to work for the Grenfell Tower inquiry, where I met Zainat. And I worked there for 1 year, and then I started Pupillage. In terms of Pupillage, my first time properly applying for Pupillage, I made 12 applications. I got 2 first-round interviews. I got 2 second-round interviews and 1 offer. So I was lucky in the sense that it didn't take me long to get Pupillage. I got it practically within the first year of properly applying. The previous year, I had sent applications to the chambers that carry out their own Pupillage application process, external from Pupillage Gateway. And the tips that I would have regarding Pupillage applications, well, I think I really don't like giving tips on Pupillage applications, because I think a lot of it is to, once you fulfill a certain criteria, I think a lot of it is to do with luck. But I think you need to make sure that you have enough experience to talk about on your form before you apply. You need to make sure you get a well-rounded view of the industry before applying. I would say experience working in a solicitor's firm and chambers, so you have an informed view as to why you want to be a barrister rather than solicitor. And your answers on the form, they need to be clear and straight to the point. I always tell people, when you're writing your Pupillage Gateway, if you've studied a bar course, you would have learned how to draft particulars of claim. Pretend your application form is a particulars of claim. A particulars of claim is designed to be punchy. You're supposed to get straight to the point, and that's what the your answers need to be. They need to be punchy and straight to the point. And make sure you're developing your advocacy skills every day. And there are infinite ways to do this. And you could talk in the camera about a legal subject for 10 minutes every day. I remember I did this at university, where I posted YouTube videos discussing topics, and my friends used to laugh at me, but who's laughing now? And so there are so many things you can do to develop your skills. And I said this before, but you need to be creative and think outside the box. Till this day, I don't know what it was that the interviewers saw in me, but I will say that in interviews, you need to be confident, and preparation is key. And one thing I will say before I end is, believe me, if I can do it, you can do it. Don't let anyone talk you out of trying. Along the way, you will get many people, even people in your own circle, who will try to talk you down. Some will undermine your ability. Some will look at your skin color or your background and prejudge you. Others will talk you down because they don't want you to become more successful than they are. But my key advice to you is that you need to be tunnel visioned if this is the career you want. You need to be focused, driven, and lastly, you need to be very, very, very stubborn to get to where I am, to be a pupil barrister, or to be a barrister. You need to be very stubborn. So yeah, so that's my journey, and I think I'll end it there.
Luke, that was fantastic. So inspiring on so many levels. I think we can all take lots of lessons from your journey. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Vidor to go next. Just a reminder to everybody to please use the chat box if you've got anything for Luke. And also Vidor, who's going to speak next, has to leave a little bit early. if you can type any questions for her as she speaks, and perhaps you can try and answer them as she goes. But yeah, Luke, again, that was so great. I mean, I'm much more older than you, sadly, but even so many lessons just from listening to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Zena, and thank you again, Luke. That was really inspiring, actually. So much for speaking as well. Zena's already introduced me. My name is Vidor. I'm a tenant at 25 Bedford Row. I've actually been a tenant for I think about 2 years now. I was officially taken on in 2018, and I actually did a third six pupillage at 25 Bedford Row. So I didn't do my actual pupillage in chambers. So just in terms of my journey, I'm actually, well, I came to the UK when I was 11. So my parents didn't give birth to me. I was an immigrant. And I came at the age of 11 thinking I was coming on holiday. And lo and behold, I found myself here. I'm still here and I'm yet to go back. Although I do go back for some holidays. So when I actually did come to the UK, I think from probably the age of 11, I said I wanted to be a lawyer, not necessarily because I knew what that meant, but I used to watch a lot of TV, and there was a particular show which probably no one is aware of. Maybe Zena can help, but it's called Ally McBeal. And it was basically just this lawyer who, oh yay, Lady Jean knows it. So it was basically just about a lawyer who she randomly had like moments where she'll be daydreaming in court and her mind wanders, and you know she's representing someone and her mind just completely wanders. And at that age, I used to have I think a very vivid imagination, and watching her I thought, oh my gosh, that is, you know, like really exciting. I would like to be like her. So I said I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't know necessarily what that entailed, what that meant. So for a long time, whilst at secondary school, I kept saying to everyone, yeah, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a lawyer. And then at the age of 15, I actually went to Wood Green Crown Court because when I came to settle in the UK, I lived in Tottenham. So I was sort of on my way out when the Tottenham riots were going on, and basically around seeing all the buildings burning. I still live here. So at the age of 15, I went to Wood Green Crown Court with my friends. It was summer, we were bored, we had nothing else better to do with ourselves. So we just thought, you know what, let's go and have a look what's going on. And that was after a school trip that we were told we can go there whenever we wanted to. And just sitting there watching the barristers with the wigs and everything, I thought, oh, that looks, you know, that just looks like fun. I want to be able to do that. And so at that point, I said to myself, you know, I want to be a barrister. Again, I didn't really know what that entailed or what was required because I didn't necessarily have anyone guiding me or directing me in terms of what it meant. All I was told from my teachers was, you know, make sure you study English-based or essay-based subjects. So for A-levels, I did sociology, government and politics, history and English, just because I thought those are heavy essay-based stuff that will prepare me for my life as a barrister. And so spent the 2 years just studying that, trying to focus on all 4 subjects, and actually didn't do as well as I was predicted. And so what that meant is I effectively got rejected from every university that I applied for, and found myself in a position where I thought, okay, so I can't go to university. Do I have to resit? Do I have to go back to redo all my A-levels? What is the position for me? Because even though I didn't fail, I got decent grades, but not for those universities that I wanted to. And I didn't want to go to any other university that was necessarily, for me, didn't fit into that criteria of this is what you need to do to become a barrister. So luckily for me, and I say luckily because I was sort of sitting there 3 weeks later just thinking about what to do. And then I received an email from the University of Birmingham basically just saying, we're sorry we couldn't offer you, a place this year, but if you are willing to take a year out and come back next year, we're happy to take you. And so I got really excited. I called them. I said, is this real? Do I need to take any exams? What do I need to do? And they said, no, you don't need to do anything. You just need to take a year out. And if you're happy to come back the following year, we're more than happy to take you on. So as I said, that was effectively a stroke of luck because I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. So whilst at university, I actually did a lot. So I was working part-time at Woolworths, which doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know. And probably looking at everyone's faces, I don't think many people know that what Woolworths is. So show my age. So worked at Woolworths. Also did something called the street law, which was part of the University of Birmingham pro bono unit. So that was basically just going to schools and youth clubs in the local area, just talking to young people about their rights, and also just supporting people in the community just to let them know what their rights were. Also did sort of like sessions with actual university students, talking to them about their housing rights. So that was a way for me to build my public speaking as well as my legal experience. I also did a lot of mentoring work whilst at university, which was to mentor inner city kids as well, who were either disaffected from education. So a lot of my first and second year was spent just doing basically just doing a lot of work. And what that then meant is that I didn't do as well as I should have done. So my average grade in both first and second year was a 2.2, which was really annoying because in all my tutorials, I was getting marked as you're capable of getting a first, or you are getting a first, you're going to probably get a first. But then all my exams, I was getting a 2.2. So what I decided to do, and this was actually something that my older brother sort of inspired me to do. I was sitting there complaining, I'm not going to get a good grade. I'm not going to be a barrister. And he basically just said, he's like, well, it's really a choice that you have. And that's, you can either just give up and say, I'm not going to do well in my third year, so what's the point? Or you can sit there and work out, what do I need to do to get the grades that I want to get, and just work towards that. So I decided to go for the latter and effectively stopped working, stopped doing all my voluntary work, worked literally 10 to 12 hours a day, sat in the library every single day, worked Monday to Saturday, just doing my essays, reading, doing my revision, doing everything, and actually ended up graduating with a first class. So that was a shock to my system as well, because I thought I'll probably get my grade up to a 2.1. And so getting a first, that was something that was a big deal. And it took me, I think, probably 3 months for it to sink in that I actually graduated university with a first. So after university, I then didn't necessarily know what my next step was going to be. So I'd started applying for a lot of paralegal work, but didn't necessarily have the skills because I spent a lot of time working or doing things that weren't necessarily relevant in terms of the kind of skills that they were looking for paralegals. So I ended up working in B&Q as a sort of just as a cashier. And I remember used to be so angry. Like Wednesdays were my favorite days because that was like the old age people day where you had all these lovely old couples coming in and being super friendly. But then the Saturdays were my worst days because you had all these people who would speak down to you because they assume that this is the end of your life. And because I was working with my cousin at that time, we used to sort of sit there and think, we're university graduates, like I've got a first class and I have to sit here and listen to this person, speak. And it just used to make me really angry. But at the same time, it kind of then pushed me to make sure that I pursued the career that I wanted to pursue and not to give up. So after working in B&Q, I basically went on holiday for like 6 weeks, quit my job, went on holiday, came back, and then did more work experience. I went to Ghana for 6 weeks just to say, let me go and enjoy myself. And then when I came back, I worked in lots of different roles. So I then decided, I worked as an admin assistant for a shipping company. I then managed to get a job at a charity called the Cardinal Hume Centre in their immigration department. So I was working there. I also then decided to set up a charity. And that's because from my personal experience, there wasn't a lot of information out there. So the whole point of the charity was to provide young people who were from similar backgrounds or had similar experiences as myself with sort of the information they needed to pursue the careers that they wanted to pursue. So that's what I effectively spent a lot of my year after university doing, which was, so I managed to set up the charity, which was like a mentoring project. And it's still going on today. I worked for the shipping company for a bit. I also worked for the Cardinal Hume Centre. and then actually ended up working at Enfield Youth Offending Service as a court support officer. So that was an opportunity for me to see court cases, to work in the youth courts, and to see how the system works, because predominantly I wanted to get into criminal law. After that year, I then went to law school and finished law school. After finishing law school, I was lucky to get a paralegal job in a firm called Simpson Miller. And I actually worked in education and community care law and doing public law as well. So I don't actually have any criminal background, or did not have any criminal background before pupillage. And so I worked there for a while. And then after 4 years, and 4 years, because even though I was in my third year of university, I started applying for pupillage. So I applied for pupillage in 2011. I applied in 2012. I applied in 2013, and I applied in 2014. And every single year I got interviews. So every year I got 2 to 3 interviews. The second and third year of applying, I got to the final stages, but just never quite got to the final stage. And I could have effectively given up at that point. But the point was, well, I'm close enough now, so I need to keep going. So I continued applying. And then luckily I got a pupillage actually in a law firm, in a solicitor's firm that had a barrister working there also. So I did my pupillage in education and criminal law. And then after completing pupillage, I applied to 25 Bedford Row for a third six pupillage, and then got tenancy after my third six pupillage. So I've been in chambers for 2 years now, since 2018. So just in terms of my current experience, so Z has asked me to sort of talk a bit about my experience as a tenant or my experience as a pupil. And for me, pupillage was intense. And it was intense because you were coming as a third six pupil. It was very different from coming as an actual pupil, because as a pupil, you for your first 6 months, you shadow everyone, you're shadowing different barristers, you're doing work for them. Whereas as a third six pupil, you're coming into chambers and you're expected to already know the work that you're doing. And so a lot of my time was spent doing my own cases, but not just doing my own cases, but also doing the assessments with chambers pupils, and also doing work for members of chambers, whilst also doing my own personal stuff. So effectively, social life was non-existent. And it was just about just working to get through that year. And then in terms of practice, my practice, it got much, after sort of getting tenancy, things eased down a bit, in the sense of you don't have to do any work for anyone in chambers anymore. You have your own practice. And for me personally, things have moved on quite differently. So my first year as a tenant, or as a third six pupil, was very court heavy. I was in court 6 days a week, discovered that Saturday court existed, didn't know it did. So that was a revelation for me. And so it was a lot of court work. In my second year, I did sort of junior briefs, so which is basically long cases, working with senior barristers. So you're effectively playing a support role for those senior barristers in court. And then now, luckily for me, during COVID, I'm working as part of the Grenfell inquiry. So I get to actually work from home, be chilled, do what I want, have a bit of a social life, and basically live a life that I've not lived for like a very, very long time. And so that's my current experience. So what I found actually is that you're not limited in terms of being a barrister. So you might, for example, start out saying you want to be a criminal barrister, but then now, for example, I'm doing the Grenfell inquiry, which is an element of public law. And so it's very fluid, and you kind of just have to be willing to go with the flow and sort of be guided by what your interests are, and not to limit yourself as you sort of go through your career as well. The other thing as well that I think was really important, just a piece of advice, is don't be afraid to create opportunities for yourself. So Luke spoke about this a lot, spoke about this before, where, he pointed out that he networked, spoke to barristers, and by him actually making himself present in Harrow Crown Court, he was able to meet the judge. He was able to get, work experience and mini pupillages that way. So you have to be willing to create opportunities for yourself. And for me, one of the opportunities I created for myself was to effectively go online and stalk barristers. Like, I'll go on their LinkedIn, I'll look on their on the website, read about them, find out what their email is, send them an email. If they come back and say, sorry, I can't help you, that's fine. I just move on to the next barrister. And it's just by doing that I was able to kind of get people who mentored me, who gave me guidance, who gave me really helpful advice throughout. So you have to try and create your own opportunities because it doesn't always come easily. Another opportunity that I created for myself was my very first legal experience. Because I didn't know anyone that was in law, the very first legal experience I had was arranged through the immigration solicitor who had helped my family get our leave to remain in this country. And so it was by me contacting him years later saying, you probably don't remember me, but I'm this person's child. And, you know, you helped us back in 2000 when we first came to the UK. I'm looking for legal experience. Could you help? And then he was able to sort of help me get that legal experience. So you also have to use what you have. You might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know any lawyers. I don't know anyone that could help. But actually, you guys have the opportunity in the sense of where everybody's online now. So use the networks you already have, use the people that are already around you and create those opportunities for yourself. The other thing I'll say is be determined. It's not an easy journey. It's not quick either. But just don't lose focus and just keep going, because as long as every year, every rejection and every failure is a lesson in itself. So for example, if you apply for a pupillage, your pupillage application is not successful in year 1, year 2, go back and look at it and think, well, what did I do then that didn't work for me, and how can I do it better? And so use those rejection letters, use those failures as a way to learn and further develop yourself. And every year you will find that as you sort of mature, you actually get better. And I remember reading one of the first pupillage applications I ever did and thought to myself, yeah, I definitely would not have taken me on either. And it's just, it's one of those things. You have to look at the rejection and use that to build yourself. And the final thing I'll say is every experience is relevant. So if, for example, you've got work experience doing retail, IT, it's not necessarily law related. It's still relevant because it's relevant. It's transferable skills. So one of the things I used to do during my pupillage applications was to talk about my experience working in B&Q and dealing with, a stay-at-home mom who was really angry that she didn't get the refund that she wanted, and how I was able to solve that problem for her. And that was an advocacy exercise. And it was by me looking at that experience as an advocacy exercise that I could then portray that I'm actually qualified and able to do this job. And so use the experience that you have and take into account how that builds on you as a future barrister, or on what transferable skills you can get from that, and use that to your advantage. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
That was awesome, Vida. Thanks so much. Another really powerful, moving and inspiring story. Just so much to take from that. I think from you, and you've spoken at some of my events in the past, and one thing I always take away from Vida is just sheer resilience and just not giving up. And I think for people that want to be barristers, that's a really key lesson. So thank you so much for sharing, Vida. In terms of who's to go next, Lady Jean, would you mind going next? You're still on mute. There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah, we've got you. Thanks so much.
Okay. I don't know what to say now after listening to Vida now. So I'm in the same chambers as Vida and Z. I'm a second fixed pupil. I started pupillage in September of last year. And I'll start at the beginning, because I moved to the UK when I was 19. And I moved to the UK only because I wanted to study law, but I wanted to combine it. So I wanted to do law with international relations. And London Metropolitan University was offering that course. And I really wanted to combine law with something else, because I sort of became interested in the law when I was still back in high school, and we'd learned about the European Convention on Human Rights and the United Nations and all of these things. And I remember doing my A-levels final year presentation on the Second World War and organizations that sprung up after that in terms of human rights and that. And then I did an internship with a law firm in my home country. So I'm from Namibia in Southwest Africa. And I did an internship there. And at the time, it was just one technically solicitor, and he had an assistant, and he had a brand new office. There were boxes absolutely everywhere. It was chaotic, and he was thankful for any help that he could get. And I got, stuck right in with him. And what we were dealing with at the time, what he was dealing with at the time, is people from the townships, from the sort of semi-permanent settlements that sprung up during apartheid and were there since then. They were being forcefully removed from where they were living, and they'd been living there for, since the 1980s and so on. And the government was saying, you have to move. I don't know where to. I don't know how, but you have to go. And so he was doing a lot of strategic litigation in that regard. And I just thought it was really interesting how this one person was representing all of these people who obviously had, the same cause, the same issues that they were facing with, and how he worked so tirelessly for something that he believed in, that he thought was important. And because, it was just a small firm, he was happy to get all the help that he could get. So I was able to come along for client meetings. I went along to court. And it was really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. And so I got this sense of, very broadly, I'd say, a sense of justice, and a sense of human rights, and a sense for, standing up against the state, maybe let's put it that way. So I wanted to do something like that. And I went to the careers advisor, and I was like, lady, I want to be a human rights lawyer. And it's a discussion for another day, but it wasn't a very, very good school in terms of equality and diversity. And I think, just to put it bluntly, they were extremely racist. And they made it very, very clear that there was no such thing as a human rights lawyer, and certainly not a black one, and certainly not a female one. So, just do something else instead. And they gave me a list of jobs to choose. Real estate agent was one of them. I didn't become a real estate agent. I sort of, I just carried on thinking about, how can I get to a job, any line of work that will tick those boxes that I thought were important and interesting to me. So I was reading up on law with international relations. And yeah, so I saw that London Metropolitan was offering that. I had been to London twice at this point in my whole life, and I was happy. I was happy to move. So I packed up my stuff, came here, and uni was, to me, one of the greatest experiences, probably still to this day. It was really nice because I had tutors who were incredibly involved, incredibly interested, who would, dedicate time and effort. So it was only in third year, I think, the second and third year, that I was able to choose my elective, and I made sure to take everything that had social justice and human rights and civil liberties and those kinds of things. And I spent a lot of time in my tutors' offices, just sort of, talking about what we had been discussing in class, but also just talking about what happens after the LLB. And they were very inspiring. And it's just, what I learned in uni is that if you take your time to get to know your tutors, and take your time to really obviously, do all the reading and all of that, and have things to contribute before class, after class, during class, it was a really enriching experience all around. And for me, again, not being from the UK, admin law, which everybody else seemed to hate, admin law and constitutional law, I loved it so much, because I was like, oh, so this is what the UK is about. So it was really nice to sort of learn that way. But yeah, after my bachelor's degree, mind you, I wasn't really able to do much work experience while I was in school. And I always found it very difficult, when you're told around second and third year, oh, you need to make sure you do vacation schemes and work experience and all of that. It's easier said than done, especially if you have work commitments, because I'd moved here without any, family support. All my family's at home. So I was supporting myself. I was working as a barmaid. And during the semester, I was able to work only, a few hours, because I had to prepare for exams and that. So in Easter vacation and all of those times when you're supposed to be doing vacation schemes, is when I was working extra shifts. So I had money to, tide me over for the semester. So I wasn't able to do any work experience during undergrad. I did volunteer, which I was able to fit in because they were very flexible in terms of their timing. But I never did a vacation scheme in that. And so after my bachelor's degree, I did a master's degree, just because I was really interested in international law. So I did a master's degree in European Union law and international criminal law, which I really, really enjoyed. And then I came back to the UK after that, and that's the first time I was able to do work experience. So I started working in an immigration NGO, which I loved. I really, really loved it. And it was the first time that I was able to really use the skills that I'd gained, drafting and that from undergrad. And we were writing letters to the Home Office for individuals who are facing unlawful deportation from the UK. So we were writing letters to the Home Office, responding to their deportation orders and that. And it was a really, really nice environment because everybody was just so incredibly dedicated to what they were doing. And like I was saying earlier before, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I was thinking about human rights at the time, or anything, justice was probably my guiding theme. So it was a really, really nice place to see, well, not nice, but a good place to see like injustice happening and being asked to do something about it. So that was a really, really, really good experience. I stayed there for a couple of months, and then I sort of hopped from internship to internship. I'm not saying this to throw any shade, but I think people should be aware that like all of my internships were unpaid. So I managed to do most of them part-time, and then I had to work. Well, no, some of them were part-time, some of them were actually full-time internships. So there were times when I'd finish at the office at around 5 and then start a waitressing shift at 7 and not get home before 2 in the morning and then do the whole thing again the next day. And it's sort of, I'm grateful for the opportunity because that's the only way I could get experience. But I do think that it's a really difficult, almost shameful system that exists. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, not justifying it, obviously. But yes, I did, a few internships, and then what else did I do? And then I was working as a research assistant as well for some time. And through all of my internships, they were all varied, but what I learned from every single one, like once, the time came to an end and I was applying for the next thing, I almost did like a checklist of like, okay, what did I enjoy about this one? What did I not enjoy about that one? What did I learn from this one? What do I want from the next one? And that was really nice because I was able to sort of narrow down what really interested me and what I found fulfilling. So in terms of the research job, for example, I really liked the academic part of it because I had just come out of a master's degree and I really liked that part of it. But I didn't like that it didn't have an immediate impact because when you have a research project, you have deadlines, obviously, but whether you do it this week, next week, or the week after doesn't make a difference for an individual. And so that's what I missed. So every time I applied for a new thing, I sort of asked myself, okay, so what do you want from the next experience and the next? And then I felt after about 2 years of doing work experience, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to apply for the BPTC because I didn't apply when I was an undergrad. I never thought of applying when I was an undergrad. I didn't apply when I was doing my master's because I was aware that it was just so competitive. So I didn't want to. I mean, you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose by trying. But I just didn't have anything interesting to say in my CV, and I was aware of that. So I thought, let me beef it up first and then apply. And I applied the year before I started the BPTC. And just as Vidor said, like she looked at her old application and was like, yeah, I wouldn't hire me either. And I look at mine now, I'm like, girl, no. So it was quite nice to look at it again. And so I applied the second time around. I was on the BPTC. And at this point, I had done, like I said, like two years of work experience. At this point, I'd actually been at the ECCC, the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia. So that's like sort of like a UN tribunal dealing with the crimes of the Khmer Rouge. And there I was supervised by 2 UK barristers. So they knew exactly what I'd be facing. So they gave me work that I could sort of work like you'd expect a pupil's level and standard to be. And they were like, at the end of my internship, they encouraged me to apply. So I had applied, and I had also received a scholarship from Lincoln's Inn to do the BPTC. And then when I was on the BPTC, like I'm trying to say, that's when I applied for pupillage a second time around. And I used every single opportunity I could get. There were CV clinics, there were open days. Like, I don't know if I should make advertisement for Lincoln's Inn, but I really, really love the inn that I'm with because it was through their assistance, first of all, that I was able to even do the BPTC. And once on it, they had so many open evenings. They had mentoring schemes. They had CV clinics. And it was the first time that I had somebody to actually look at my application. And I was able to bring the one from the previous year and the one I was drafting now. And I had barristers literally like rip apart my first year application, say, this is shit, and this is shit, but this is how you can improve it. And it was so blunt, but it was so refreshing, and also it was very honest and true because they were in their chambers on the pupillage committee sometimes, so they knew what they were looking for, and it was just nice to have some genuine honest feedback. Because the first year I was showing it to my mom, and she was like, "Oh, my darling, you are so smart, it's so good." What is that? Like, of course she's going to say that. So that was really, really, really nice to have, and yeah. Then I got pupillage, which was mad because, genuinely, like my first round was like a practice run, and the second one I was so grateful and so shocked and surprised to even be offered interviews. I got 3 first round interviews, and then 1 second round, 1 third round was 25, where I accepted pupillage. And it was very, very, very surreal. I was obviously very relieved and very happy. Listening to Vida saying she applied in 2011 all the way through to 14. It's not unheard of. Like, that is not abnormal. It happens so often that people apply year for year for year for year, and just get rejection. So I understand how lucky I was to have gotten pupillage the second time I applied. But like everybody else has said, like, you have to be resilient, you have to be persistent. And for me, I think I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a barrister, but I was sure that I wanted to work in law. So there's nothing wrong, I think, with being a bit lost and doing a little bit of this, doing a little bit of that until you get to where you want to be. Because I applied to do paralegal work and nobody would have me. I do not know why, but nobody would have me. And then, I was like, well, if I'm not getting that, I'm going to do something else, and I'll do this, and I'll do this, until I narrowed down for myself what it was that I wanted to do. And for me, I think I do have an incredible privilege in that I have so many official and unofficial mentors. And like, Luke said himself, you approach people, you talk to them, you ask them whatever you have to ask them. You just need to make sure that you're being proactive. And again, networking is really, really important, but I think it puts people off. Sometimes, like, I used to hate that word when I was an undergrad, and people were like, oh, you have to network, because, not in a bad way, but I was 20 years old. I have nothing to say, I have nothing to contribute. So I was very, very taken aback by asking people or trying to talk to people, because I have nothing to add. That's how I felt. Networking is the worst. Yes, it is. But it's a lot easier once you just sort of get over that fear, or if you do exactly what Luke did, like, just go out, put yourself out there, talk to people, go to court and that. And it's you'll be surprised at what you can learn, what you can gain. I remember when I was on the BPTC, you do what's called qualifying sessions, where you go to your inn for like different kinds of learning sessions, sometimes it's dinners and so on. And there was a barrister talking about the importance of criminal defense lawyers in the current system. I remember sitting in the front row like this, and I was like, oh my God, he's so cool, he's so smart. And like 8 months later, he was my pupillage supervisor for my first 6. I was like, oh my God. So, and even after that evening, I went to him, I spoke to him, I was like, I thought this was really interesting. I thought that was really interesting. What do you have to say about that? And we just got chatting, and you'd be surprised at how helpful people can be if you just ask for it. But you definitely have to be determined. So I don't want to repeat what everybody's already said. I think, that was my journey to the bar.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Lady Jean. And I think it's really one thing that comes through when you're sharing your journey is just that kind of fresh excitement and the genuine passion that you have for what you're doing. And I think that's really nice to hear as somebody that is 5 years post pupillage like me. So you and I need to hang out some more, so you can remind me. You can remind me about why I do what I do. But thank you so much. That was awesome. And again, people, keep your questions coming, and we'll get to them at the end. I'm just checking if there were any specifically for Vida, because Vida's got to go. I don't think any was specific for Vida, unless I've missed any. So in which case, Vida, feel free to leave whenever you need to. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Z.
Thanks, Vida.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Vida. Take care. Cool. Last but certainly not least, I'm going to hand over to Ehsan.
Right. I mean, I am sort of astounded by what I have heard in the last 1 hour. So I wish I was an audience rather than having to speak and follow all of this. But I think what everyone will see is that despite the diversity of everyone's experience, it's a few common factors and skills that all of us have, which led us to where we are. And I think my journey and my path to where I am will probably display sort of those similar factors. I'll have to go back to where it started. And just like everyone else, my start is different too. I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Bangladesh, and I grew up there, studied there. I started my university in Bangladesh. Um, as a bit of a background, and the reason I tell you this is because there is a perception that bar is for certain kind of people, and I think if anything else this evening shows that it's not. It's everyone can enter it, um, with different degrees of success. I come from a place, from a conservative society. My parents separated when I was very young, and if any of you know that kind of society, that then you will know, coming from a family where your parents are separated, it brings a number of taboos. It's as if it's your fault for that happening. So that, I think, had an effect on me, and that gave a bit of a handicap as to people's perception of me and how far I will go in life. And I think I probably adopted that mindset at some point as well, that, if I can have a job of some sort, it should be okay. Don't aspire too high, And it was not until I was 18, when I had almost finished my first year of university. I was doing a distance learning program as part of University of London, because that was the only English law provider, and that was the only path that you can become a barrister in Bangladesh, not necessarily in the UK. I sort of realized maybe I can do a bit more than this. What are the options available? And UWI Bristol at that point, eventually where I graduated from, was doing scholarships for students in Bangladesh and a few other Asian countries. Now, my mother could never afford to send me to the UK to be able to study here. So I thought I'll give it a go and see what happens. It was one scholarship, hundreds of students applying from all over the country. And fortunately, I got that scholarship. I'm not sure what they saw, but they somehow decided. Now, something perhaps Lady Jean will understand is that, well, that's the tuition fees, but still you have to come here and you have to, pay rent, pay bills. I don't get any tuition loan. I don't get any bursary. So you have to be here and you have to think about, right, how do I do the rest? So you find a job in a new country. It's extremely cold. No one tells you that. And you have to start doing things. And because I came into my second year, I missed all of the explanation that you have to do vacation schemes, you have to do mini pupillages. I had to Google it myself. What are these things? And I think I had written myself off in that year to say, look, it's not for me. And I was missing home. I thought, look, I'll graduate somehow and I'll just go back home. This is not for me. But somewhere a penny dropped, and I thought, you know what, maybe I can do a bit more. And I was doing all right in my assessments in university. So I thought, right, let me go ahead and try to get many pupillages and vacation schemes and see how they work. And I realized that actually to get those, I have to get some other experience in the UK. So I did every kind of volunteering or any kind of experience that you can do in your university, alongside working part-time during my undergraduate. And by the time I finished my university, I think I had done more than others around me, which meant, I can take the next step. But the possible options from there is either you do the bar, but that costs £15,000 outside London. I don't have the money to do that. Or you can do a master's. I thought, let's give that a try. Again, I can't afford to do a master's. So the option was go to the list of universities in the country and apply for scholarship everywhere you can. So I applied for a scholarship in Newcastle. Again, they were doing one scholarship, tuition fees, applied for that, somehow got that scholarship. And I thought, well, the next destination is Newcastle. And people often ask me, well, why did you go to Bristol or why did you go to Newcastle for your undergraduate or master's? And I always say to them, well, food is a different word, but I just go after money. They paid me to do it, and that's what it was, because that's the only option, you know. And if you're an international student, you need a visa to stay in the country. And that 1 year was my stay way to be in the country. I think going to Newcastle doing a master's was helpful. It helped me build confidence. It helped me understand how much I can do. And that was the year I applied for a bar scholarship. That was the second time, and I got a scholarship to do the bar as well. So I thought, right, that's a way forward. Now I can, you know, extend my stay here by 1 more year, and I can afford to do the bar. Well, that's good. By the end of my master's, I started, because I came to the country to do the bar, I was on the path to do that, but without any long-term planning how to get pupillage or understanding how to get pupillage. I did a few applications, not really seriously, a bit of copy-paste job here and there. You know, if I got an interview, it was a surprise that, well, did you actually read my application? And I remember going for an interview that year and having a feeling of humiliation after the interview, not because they humiliated me, but because having a self-check that I should be doing better, I shouldn't be turning up when I'm not, you know, ready for this. And so from there, I started looking out. I started realizing that I have to do a bit more. I have to do something different. My visa was running out as well. And during my master's, again, I worked throughout my master's. I worked with a car insurance company, the most exciting job I ever had. Although, you know, it wasn't that fun. I had to do it. I see one of my classmates from my LLM days is attending today, and he will attest to that, is how much reading there was. And after doing all the seminars and everything, I had to go and work until 8 or 9 o'clock and then do my reading for the next seminar. But what that meant was, when I applied for my next job with a law firm, they did personal injury insurance work. All the questions they had about, you know, how insurance work, how the industry works, I was on top of that, and that led me to my next opportunity. But I soon got bored. I thought, no, this is not for me. I don't want to do personal injury. And my visa was running out again. So I resigned from this law firm, not knowing where I'll go next. Someone tells me there is a role coming up in East Africa, in Kenya. There's a charity that teaches law to prisoners in maximum security prison. Do you want to do that? And I thought, I was so bored with that job, I thought I'd rather go and work in a maximum security prison. And that's what I did. Instead of going back home, I packed my bags and I was off to Kenya without any understanding of the culture, completely new society. I thought, right, that's where I am. And I think that was a turning point for me, because working in a small charity gave me responsibility, being able to express what my skills are, develop new experience, and understanding people. You know, I was teaching some prisoners public law, and they were doing a University of London international degree as well, something that I started my undergrad with. So it sort of all came together. I was teaching them jurisprudence at some point, and the feeling you have when you're discussing with a prisoner who is on death penalty, the philosophy of murder, you sort of have to pinch yourself after you do that. But that, it just one thing led to another. I came back to the UK, did my bar, sort of in the same old cycle of studying and working alongside. It was getting a bit old, and I thought, I applied for pupillage that year, didn't get it. I thought, right, so what next? So I wrote back to the charity that I used to work with, and I said, I'm going to go back, this time to Uganda. And they gave me a responsibility of starting a new department on strategic litigation. So a number of prisoners who shouldn't be in prison, not because of necessarily something went wrong with their trial, but often because the law itself is not right. So I went in specifically to work for prisoners who were incarcerated because they pleaded insanity or diminished responsibility in their trial. And the system was that you just stay in prison indefinitely until someone decides, right, you have suffered enough, you're free to go. And that was a life-changing year, if anything. Going into prison every day, working with these people, dealing with cases of murder, robbery, rape, it really helped me build what I am as a person and what matters to me. And I think it gave me a passion for criminal law, which helped me a lot in the pupillage so far. But what that led to is being able to do all of that. It gave me a perspective that life does not always lead to pupillage. I was still planning to come back to the UK and apply for pupillage, but I had an understanding that, well, if it doesn't work out, I will do other things. And I had to take moments, even after I received my pupillage offer, that do I want to leave what I was doing and go back to the UK? Is that what I really want to do? And I think that's probably what I will tell everyone, is that don't be afraid of stepping away from it. Don't be afraid of going away from this whole competition and race, and see if you really want it. But what that benefited me is that when I came back to the UK to attend interviews, I had to come back here for a month, do my interviews and fly back. In my interview, I felt confident. I felt I could speak about other things. And fortunately, by that time, I had been hired by Ministry of Justice in Rwanda because they were undertaking a review of their whole of criminal justice system. And because of my work in Uganda and Kenya, they thought I could come in and give them a perspective of those jurisdictions. And the week before my pupillage interview that eventually got me pupillage, by that time I had been rejected from most chambers. This was the only one left. So I was really down in the dumps. This project in Rwanda, they come up with a specific task that Rwandan government wants to introduce something called plea bargaining. There's something in the UK equivalent of that, but this is really different. This is an American concept where you negotiate a sentence with a prosecutor, and lower you negotiate, the better. And they want to introduce something like that, but they want you to look over the law that they're drafting. And once you have helped them draft it, within 2 weeks' time, this law will go before the Rwandan parliament. And this all happened the day before my pupillage interview. And being able to sit in the interview and say, look, what I'm doing there, it is potential that my work can affect law of a country. And that, I'm not saying that to say, well, look how cool I am and you should give me pupillage, but I was saying that from a place of, look, I have other things going on. And those are the skills I have. So you should hire the skill and not just my experience that I have. And I think that was the moment where I felt I could bring all of it together, starting in a country where I have no idea of, what pupillage is. If you told me 10 years ago that I will be sitting in front of all of you and telling you about my experience of becoming a pupil in a chambers in the UK, I will laugh at you. I'll say you have no clue. And from there to this journey, I have cherished the journey more coming here where I did. And I think that's what I'll tell all of you, is that bring all of your skills together, bring all of your experiences together, no matter where you come from. Think about what you can offer to the people that you'll be dealing with. Because ultimately, this job, and that's what I've learned in the last 7 months of my pupillage, ultimately, it is about dealing with people. Ultimately, it is about reassuring someone when you're sitting in a cell with them at the bottom of a court, or a multimillionaire who is putting risk of the money in your hands. Are you able to reassure them? And I think more and more as a result, pupils who come in, they have diversity of experience. You see rarely people who walk straight from LLB, BPTC, and into pupillage. And I think that's what helped me. That's why I'm here. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just, I mean, that was fascinating. So much humility in your story, given you've won like 1 million scholarships along the way to get you where you are. Very, very inspiring. I mean, I'm so totally moved by all of our speakers today, and it reiterates for me why it is that I do this project, why it is that I try and curate the panels in the way that I do, and why I think that's so important for people to hear from a breadth of experience. Yeah, you've all been amazing. So thank you all so much. I'm going to look at the Q&A box, and then we can start answering some of those questions. And we'll do our best to cover as many as we can. So I'm just scrolling back to the top. There's a question for you, Luke, in relation to the use of but what I will say is I'm pretty sure every barrister uses that in some way, shape or form. Is there anything that you want to say about that?
Yes, I would say it's definitely something you shouldn't do in court. However, it's something that, as Zainab said, most people do. Most people do say, But I think the alternative and the better option is, rather than using the filler, just be silent. So if you forget about what you're going to say, just pause for a moment, be silent, and then start again. But yeah, I see where you're coming from, and is definitely not the correct approach to use.
You know what, Luke, as somebody that's a bit, like, as I say, older and more disheveled than you, I would just say that I feel like there's a prescribed way of people telling you what advocacy should be like, what it should look like, and kind of like this checklist approach, which is very much the case in BPTC and maybe in kind of pupillage assessments and stuff. But then you get to a stage where actually, if your arguments are impactful, persuasive, and get you what you need, nobody cares. So do what you need to do in order to pass the exams and whatever else, but don't like be overconscious if that's kind of naturally if that naturally occurs, because part of that is just natural, and you don't also want to sound like a robot as well.
I agree.
That's my 2 pennies worth put in there, but thanks, Luke. The next one's for you as well. What skills or experience helped you succeed on the BPTC? Were you always a good public speaker?
Well, see, so you can be a good public speaker even though you use fillers. But in terms of written advocacy, or just the written work on the BPTC, honestly, I couldn't tell you what skills or experience helped me for that side of things. Apart from just preparing, just making sure you do all your work on time. I remember making sure that as soon as I received a piece of work, I'd go home and I'd do it. I wouldn't leave it until the last minute. So I think in terms of written work for the BPTC, that's a skill that I would say helped me. But in terms of the advocacy side, again, honestly, I had no experience of advocacy before I started the BPTC. So I had no experience that would have helped me. But in terms of skills, I think it's things which are borderline personality sort of traits. It's being able to, it's being confident. You have to be confident. Being thick-skinned, you have to be thick-skinned. I think it was these sort of skills that I developed just growing up, going through the various hardships that I went through. Just it developed this personality trait of being able to just sort of go through anything, any difficulties that came my way. I was able to get over them, and I think it was those skills that helped me on the BPTC. So yeah, those are my 2 pennies for those questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Luke. Just scrolling down, somebody's mentioned Ally McBeal. I also used to love Ally McBeal, so I'm with you on that. A lot of people on here probably have no clue what that is, and that's okay. There's a question about financial burden of pupilages. Will chambers pay for some of it for you? Does somebody want to quickly just explain how pupillage awards work?
Yeah. So your chambers will have a pupillage award. There is a minimum amount that you should receive, depending if you're in London or outside London. If you're on a minimum award, then you're going to starve a few days in the year, no doubt. But most chambers pay a bit more than that. You will receive it by a monthly payment in your first 6, and in second 6, I think most chambers will guarantee you a minimum income. But on top of that, as you do your own cases and you get paid, you will receive money for that too. So yeah, so you have some form of income, and chambers cover your pupillage financially, so you should be okay for that.
Brill, thanks so much, Hassan. Lady Jean, what was the immigration NGO that you worked for, the one that you really loved?
It was called Air Center, and they're always taking on new interns. Absolutely apply. All of you have to apply. It's a wonderful place.
Do you want to just put the name of it in the chat box if you don't mind? Is that okay? Great, thank you so much. Just going to continue scrolling down. There's lots of love for all of your stories and journeys on here. Hassan, what is the name of the organization in Kenya that you worked with?
Yes, it used to be called African Prisons Project, but now it's called Justice Defenders.
Awesome, thank you so much. I don't know if you want to pop that in the chat box as well, if anybody wants to make a note. Okay, there's a question. I think it must be for Hassan, looking at the time. Did you doubt yourself? How did you overcome these doubts?
Right, every day, even now. I think COVID has given me a lot of time to think about, do I really want to do this? But I think at the end of the day, doing all the different things that I did and going away from it helped me realize that this is what I really want to do. I think working on cases, when you help someone through the knowledge and skills you have, you realize that this is what I really want to do, and that gives you the reassurance that this is what I want to come back. And the law is such a diverse field within it. Even if you don't become a barrister, perhaps there's so many other things that you can do if you really have a knack for this. So yeah.
Brill, thank you. What kind of legal jobs should we apply for, especially with COVID? Anybody got any suggestions in relation to that? It must be particularly difficult at the moment.
I would say I don't have any advice in relation to that particular question, but I would say for people who are looking for paralegal roles, keep an eye out, because I'm pretty confident that there is going to be a COVID inquiry. And if you are into public law, anything inquiry that is in relation to COVID is going to be a very good inquiry to work on, and it's going to be a brilliant opportunity and experience to talk about in future pupillage interviews. So keep an eye out on that, because I'm pretty confident that we are going to have an inquiry relating to COVID, but especially in relation to the disproportionate amount of deaths that Black people faced compared to, or ethnic minorities face compared to their counterparts. So keep an eye out on that.
And Luke, it's right to say, I think, that actually with all the different inquiries going on, there's often kind of roles publicised for document review paralegals, I think. I mean, I'm not sure about how that end of things work, but
yeah,
I get the impression that there's often scope to get involved with inquiries in that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, work in relation to inquiries. And even though a lot of the work, paralegal tasks and work experience you get from inquiries can be quite limited to document review, don't be put off by that, because at the end of the day, what you get from that experience is being able to say, I've worked on this major inquiry. For example, I can say I've worked on the child sexual abuse inquiry. I've worked on the Grenfell Tower inquiry, and that sounds amazing on a pupillage application. And also document review, people look down on document review roles because it is quite dull, because you just sort of do the same thing over and over again. But in fact, this is the work you do as a lawyer. This is the work you do as a barrister. You review thousands and pages of documents and evidence to review what document and what evidence is relevant and what evidence is not relevant. So again, it comes down to what we've been speaking about earlier. You can take transferable skills from anything you do and turn them into positive points for pupillage applications.
I think that's a really good point, Luke. And I'd just add to that, actually, that even if something starts out like, for example, document review, which might not be setting your soul on fire, if you show that you're really committed and really good, there's always scope to kind of get access to more analytical and high level work. So I'm one of the junior counsel on the Grenfell Tower inquiry, and we've obviously had a massive team of document review paralegals, but we've also had a selection of those paralegals that have made their way up to supporting counsel to the inquiry. So although they've started out on document review, I think one of them might even be on our call. I think Dion's on here. If she is, hello.
Hey,
she's an
Dion.
example who's fantastic. And although may have started out on document review, the work that she's doing now is essentially what you'd expect of a pupil, or if not, an early year tenant. So I guess the takeaway point from that is, even if you find yourself in a role which isn't particularly glamorous, if you show that you're committed and that you're good, you can create ways to kind of get access to better work, and just keep that in mind.
Can I just make a comment? I also worked with Dion at both the child sexual abuse inquiry and Grenfell. So I know Dion very well.
And you can second that she's very good. And also just to say that obviously we're doing a journey to pupillage session. I'm going to be doing one on training contracts, but I'm also going to be doing a session on other roles in law, like paralegals, because I think it's really important for people to see what the bridge often is before you get to pupillage or get to training contracts. So please do look out for that. And Dion's already confirmed she will be one of my speakers. So you're welcome to meet her. Great. I don't even know if she's on here, but if she is, she's probably dying of embarrassment. But anyway, swiftly moving on to the questions. Luke, again, have you got any approach with how to, have you got any advice on how to confidently approach a conversation with the barrister in court?
You just have to come across as someone who is nice, easy to get on with, because if you want to make a good impression, because essentially you're going to be doing a mini pupillage with that barrister if you ask them for one. So he needs to, or she needs to be sure that you are someone they can easily get on with. So be approachable, be nice, be confident. But also, I think a trick that I always used was whenever I watched the barrister in court and I sat in the public gallery, I would also always watch their style or something they did that I liked, and I'll catch them outside and I'll say, oh, I really liked what you did when you said that, you asked that particular question to that witness. And as barristers, we love to hear that we've done something good, and immediately you're opening yourself up to him liking or her liking you. So just be smart about it. Be smart about it. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much, Vic. Question for the whole panel. Everyone has touched on the importance of persistence. What has helped you all retain your resilience throughout your journey to the bar, especially in light of some of the challenges you have faced? Lady Jean, do you want to take that one?
Every single time someone said I couldn't do something, I made a note of it, and I'm like, I'll show you that I can. I show you that I can. But it was more like I knew what I liked. I enjoyed doing it. And so for me, it wasn't a matter really. It was hard, I'm not going to lie. But I'd found something that inspired me, that interested me, that fulfilled me, that, you know, had me smiling from ear to ear. And so for me to not chase that was not an option. So keeping that resilience going was just sort of automatic. In terms of like practical every day, like I said, you know, I'd work in the office until 5 in the evening and then start a shift in the 5 in the afternoon, start a shift in the evening. again, that was very, very difficult. But every single time I did do that, I knew what I was doing it for. I knew that every time I got a paycheck at the end of the month, I was like, right, so I can buy an admin book now. I can buy this, I can do this. And I knew it was feeding something that I really loved to do and I really wanted to do. But I think, you know, there's a big difference between people giving you constructive criticism, saying, you know, you need to work on this part of your CV. Take that on, for sure, take that on. But there will be people who want to sort of, there's a metaphor that you pull up the ladder behind you, like people have made it and they're not past, you know, paving the way for the next generation, the next and the next. Those are the people to avoid. Mentorship has really helped me, speaking to people who are, you know, close enough to where I wanted to be. So it's not great speaking to QCs because they've made it and they've, not in a bad way, but they might have forgotten about what it took to get there. So talking to people who are relatively close to where you are, that to me has helped me. I looked at other people, I saw what they were doing on a, you know, on a daily basis. I was like, that's what I want to do. I've found the thing that I enjoyed and I couldn't not pursue it.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think that's really important. I think even as you progress throughout your career, and there are going to be days that you ask yourself, what the hell am I doing with my life? And it's really important to figure out what, as cliche as it sounds, but what your why is. And we've spoken about this before, but unless you know and understand what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, nothing's going to get you out of bed for that 5 a.m. train, I assure you. So always remember what that is, and hopefully that will be your guiding light. What were some of the USPs when choosing the chambers you did?
I could answer that. So for me, and this is something I should have said before, which is when you are applying for pupillage, be reasonable about where you apply. And again, this skill it comes down to having good judgment, and you need that as a barrister. And when you're applying to chambers, what I did was I looked at each chamber's website and I would look at their recent tenants and their pupils. I would read their profiles, experiences, what grades they got, what university they went to. And if I saw that a particular chambers had a particular preference, for example, they only take on students who went to Cambridge or Oxford, they only take on students who got a first-class degree, they only take on white students, I would stay away from that chambers. I'd stay far away from that chambers, and I wouldn't apply there. Not one any chambers that did not have at least one Black or ethnic minority tenant, I did not apply to. And so, in terms of my chambers, I think my chambers was the chambers that I wanted to be at. So I'm quite fortunate that I managed to get pupils here. And the reason why I wanted to be at my chambers is because they were one of the most diverse chambers I've ever come across. If you go on their website now, you will see their range of diversity. And so I was attracted to that chambers. And so just to cut it short, I think, yeah, be reasonable in where you apply. If you don't have a first class degree and you go on the chamber's website and you see the past 4 years, all their pupils have had a first class degree, what makes you think that you're going to be that person who gets pupillage? So be reasonable about where you apply.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, Luke. I'd also just really quickly add that you should also think about like the kind of practice that you actually want to have. So for me, my list of places I applied to was very, very short because I was very clear about the type of work that I was willing to do or was never ever going to do. So I'm never going to prosecute, and I was never going to be representing government in a situation where they're trying to like deport, I don't know, suspected terrorists or something. So what I mean by that is, for me, my politics and my values very much informs my work. For other people, they might be cool doing both sides of the coin, and that's also cool, and you'll get a lot of chambers that will offer that. But just think about what kind of practice you want, and if you're someone that has very particular ideas about what you want your practice to look like, then that will necessarily narrow the options that you have. I think I only applied for like 10 or something in the end. But obviously, if you don't have those parameters, then you know you've got much more variety. I don't know if Lady Jean or Ehsan want to add anything to that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Ehsan, go on, please.
Something I'll add is a couple of things. First thing is sort of practically. As much as now we can say that, you know, the choices we had, but where you are at the moment, if you don't have pupillage, I'm sure you're desperate for pupillage from anywhere. Chambers run by bees, you would take it. So
Yeah, you got to take what you can get, right?
so think practically, I think, for example, Gateway, when you go to Gateway and look at the applications, certain chambers ask certain kind of questions. And that's where your judgment comes from, like what Luke said. Think about what skills you have, what experience you have, and does your experience fit with the questions they're asking? Okay. So if they are asking for specific advocacy example, which a lot of chambers do you have enough advocacy experience to present yourself in the best way? So be guided by that. And the second thing which helped me is I got a few interviews. I got a better sense of what chambers I want to be with once I got to the interview. Some chambers, when looking at websites, I thought this would be the dream. I would love to be with you. I've sat in interviews or even assessed many pupillages where I thought I don't fit in here. Even if I get offered, this is not my place. So you'll get a lot from that. The interviews do help you.
That's so true. My so-called dream set, and I won't give the name, I interviewed their first round and I was like, what the actual heck? There's no way in hell that I want to be here. This is like, it was the most champagne socialist experience that I've encountered thus far. But anyway, what was it like? What's it like working on the Grenfell inquiry as a BAME legal advisor, and how did the opportunity present itself? Luke, do you want to take that?
I think that's for you, Zainat.
Well, the opportunity presented itself because somebody approached Chambers looking for a barrister that they thought would be able to assist in a particular work stream. So that's kind of how it came about. And what is it like? I'm really grateful to be able to try a public law aspect of law, because obviously I trained in crime. The work is interesting because I like the fact that it's overarching policy, and the idea behind it is that you're trying to make recommendations for change. I do miss the advocacy of crime, but I don't miss the chaos of crime. So it's kind of one of those where there's lots that I love about it, some things that I miss about what I used to do. But overall, it feels like it's good to be part of something meaningful and trying to make a change within a system which is flawed. So that's my take on Grenfell, but just law in general, so not specific to Grenfell. Advice and ideas, and I'm conscious of the time, so if anybody needs to go, please do. I'm going to give another 5 minutes to the questions, if the speakers are all right to hang on for a few more minutes. What I might do is skip over some of the ones that we've kind of already touched on, like the work experience ones. Ihsan, there's a specific one for you. Could you tell us more about working at Justice Defenders? Do you need formal teaching experience?
Yeah. My first time experience was, when I got involved with APP, it was a really small charity. We were trying to get resources from wherever we can. And even though I had a certain type of job description, you do whatever you can, managing libraries, arranging finance, doing a lot of admin tasks that you just have to take on. And I didn't have as much experience at the time, and I got involved with everything. So I think I sort of burnt out a bit at the end of my first time. But I built a really good relationship with the people I was working with, especially my country director there. And he at one point moved to Uganda. So I sort of moved with him, and a number of people left. I saw an opportunity and I got involved with other side of the charity, which is the legal aid. So giving legal support to prisoners. And it just sort of one thing led to the another. And a lot of my job became, by the time I left, was actually building relationships and lobbying with the government bodies, which when sometimes it had to be writing a strongly worded letter, but then other times being friends with someone in a government office and sort of influencing change that way. In terms of former teaching experience and how you get involved, because it is a international charity and it has grown a lot and it is showing a remarkable amount of impact, it does get a lot of application and it has competition. But I think if you are someone who is interested in, often people do get involved by someone you know in the charity. Go to the website, there are often interns that they're looking for volunteers. We would have students during the summer period who would come in and spend a few weeks doing some teaching assistance, and then people would come back and just spend longer period of time. So yeah, there are different ways of getting involved with what the charity does. But if someone is specifically interested in it, you can drop me an email or a message on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with someone if they're taking people on.
QS getting 50 messages tonight. All right, I'm going to take one last question because of the time, and there's quite a few questions coming through in relation to inquiries. Maybe when we do the paralegal session, we can do a little bit more about those kinds of roles and how they come up. So the last one I'm going to go for is for Lady Jean. Why did you want to train as a barrister and not a solicitor?
Because a solicitor didn't make sense to me. Like, when I was trying to find out what I wanted to do in life, I liked what lawyers do. And to me, lawyers speak in court. They represent people. They use their voices. They think on their feet and all of this. And so when I moved to the UK, cue Lady Jeannie doing, her LLB, and people are talking about barrister solicitor. I'm like, what is this? What is this barrister solicitor that you're talking about? I have no idea. And to me, it was a barrister just encapsulated what I wanted to do. You called on. I was called this morning at 8:45 to go and defend the youth, and I was there by 10:15, and I was doing the same. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on my feet. I wanted to think fast. I wanted to deal with people, but I wanted to deal primarily with legal arguments. So I think it was a benefit for me not having been from the UK, not knowing that there was a divide. I just went straight for the thing that I then learned was a barrister.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lady Jean. And thank you so much to all of our speakers. Again, you've all been fantastic. Thank you to everybody that's joined the session for your questions and comments. I really hope it was useful. We'll be having more sessions over the next couple of weeks, so look out for those. I've left a form in the Q&A chat. I know that some of you have filled this in before, but if you could leave any specific feedback or any further ideas for future sessions, that would be great. So yeah, thanks so much. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Take care, everybody. All the very best.
Bye now. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.